The first-class cabin of Aurora Wings Flight 208 shimmered with quiet elegance, soft lighting, polished wood paneling, and the gentle clink of champagne glasses. It was a red-eye from New York to London, and passengers were settling in, wrapped in luxury and entitlement. Marcus Daniels had just placed his leather briefcase under his seat, about to sit down in 2A, when a shadow crossed over him. "Excuse me, sir," said the flight attendant, her voice clipped but polite on the surface. "May I see your boarding pass?" Marcus glanced up. The woman's name tag read Sophia Reed. Her smile was tight, rehearsed, the kind of smile that didn't quite reach the eyes. "Of course," he said, handing her the printed ticket. She studied it longer than necessary, her brow furrowed. "And your name is?" "Marcus Daniels," he replied calmly. She paused. "This is a first-class seat, Mr. Daniels." "I'm aware," Marcus said. "I booked it weeks ago." Sophia didn't budge. "I'll need to verify something with my supervisor." Marcus raised an eyebrow. Around him, other passengers were watching with quiet curiosity. A man in 2C, a white man in a navy suit, caught Marcus's eye, smirked slightly, then looked away. Moments later, Sophia returned with a forced smile that now carried a faint edge. "There seems to be a situation with this seat. We may need to relocate you temporarily." Marcus blinked. "Relocate me? It's standard protocol when VIP passengers are boarding last minute." "I am a VIP passenger," Marcus said evenly, holding her gaze. "I paid $4,700 for this seat." Sophia's tone sharpened just a hair. "I understand, sir, but I'm asking for your cooperation." Cooperation. That word hit differently when spoken with a smile and backed by systemic bias. Marcus didn't move. Not yet. He could feel the eyes again, watching, measuring, silently wondering if he belonged. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. "Here's the confirmation," he said, scrolling to his email. "Seat 2A, Aurora Wings Flight 208, booked under Marcus A. Daniels." Sophia didn't even glance at the screen. "Please stay seated. We'll be back shortly." She walked away without offering the welcome drink she'd just served to the man across the aisle. Marcus exhaled slowly, adjusting the cuff of his tailored jacket. A custom deep navy, hand-stitched, Italian wool, perfectly fitted. It didn't matter. In that moment, he wasn't a Harvard graduate, not a CEO, not a man who'd built a multi-billion-dollar firm from the ground up. He was just a black man in first class. And apparently, that was a problem. 2 rows behind him, someone whispered, "Do you think he's in the wrong seat?" Another voice replied, "Maybe he upgraded last minute." It was subtle, soft. But Marcus had heard those tones all his life. He thought of his mother, working double shifts as a nurse's aide in South Chicago just to keep the lights on. She used to walk him past fancy restaurants downtown and say, "One day, baby, you'll eat wherever you want, and nobody will tell you different." He had eaten in all those places now, and still, he was being told, indirectly, and yet so very clearly, "You don't belong here." The intercom clicked on. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be closing the cabin doors shortly. Please ensure all carry-ons are stored and seatbelts fastened." Marcus sat back, jaw tight. Suddenly, a tall young man strutted down the aisle, dragging an expensive briefcase. Tailored suit, gold cufflinks, platinum status arrogance. "Excuse me," the man snapped at Sophia, now stationed at the galley. "I always sit in 2A. Why is someone in my seat?" Sophia nodded once, like they'd rehearsed this. "We're handling it, Mr. Grant." Grant. Marcus recognized the name. Lucas Grant, son of a U.S. senator. He'd seen his face on political coverage and society pages. Lucas looked past her, directly at Marcus, then sneered. "Can we speed this up? I don't fly, coach." Sophia turned back toward Marcus, now with a second attendant at her side. "I'm sorry, sir," she said, "but we're going to have to reassign your seat. Please gather your belongings." Marcus stared at her. "On what grounds?" Her smile returned. "Security protocol, sir." He glanced past her. The man in 2C leaned forward, curious. A woman across the aisle picked up her phone, pretending to scroll but clearly recording. Marcus took a long breath. This wasn't about a seat anymore. This was about something deeper, something that had followed him all his life, and for now, he chose silence. He rose, dignified, wordless. He picked up his briefcase and began walking down the aisle toward economy, while first-class passengers sipped their champagne and looked away. The overhead bin clicked shut behind Marcus as he squeezed into the narrow aisle seat in row 34, middle seat, between a man who smelled faintly of stale cologne and a woman already pressing herself against the window as far as she could go. He didn't complain. He never did. But inside, something cracked a little. He loosened his tie and stared ahead, willing himself not to feel the humiliation creeping under his skin like slow fire. Marcus Daniels, 62 years old, Harvard Business School alum, founder and CEO of Pinnacle Capital, a private equity firm managing $3.1 billion in global assets. Voted Forbes as top 25 most powerful black executives in America. Mentor to over 50 minority entrepreneurs. Board member of 3 Fortune 500 companies. And tonight, he was a black man demoted to coach for no reason, squeezed between strangers after paying $4,700 for a seat he'd booked a month in advance. The same Marcus Daniels who was flying to close a $95 million investment deal with Aurora Wings. He glanced down at his wrist, his late father's watch, a modest Seiko from the 70s, then at his phone. 9:37 p.m., still an hour to wheels up. He exhaled slowly and let his mind drift. Not to the boardroom ahead, but the memories behind. He had grown up on West 79th Street in South Side Chicago. 2 bedrooms, peeling linoleum. A single mother who worked 3 jobs to put food on the table and made sure Marcus never missed school, even when he had holes in his sneakers. "They'll try to make you feel invisible, baby," she used to tell him. "Don't you ever let them." He never did. Not when his high school counselor told him trade school might be more realistic. Not when Harvard students asked which sports scholarship got him in. Not when a Midtown bank rejected his first business loan despite a spotless credit score and a 92-page business plan. He learned early that success as a black man in America came with 2 prices: excellence and silence. You had to be twice as good and half as loud. So he worked hard, quiet, unshakable. At Harvard, he graduated in the top 5% of his class. He didn't throw parties. He didn't chase titles. He chased impact. He started Pinnacle Capital with a single client, an old friend from undergrad who believed in him when banks didn't. 15 years later, Pinnacle was managing funds for hospitals, universities, and pension systems. He'd built a firm that was not just profitable, but principled. Over 40% of his senior leadership were minorities or women. He didn't put that in brochures. He just did the work. And now, Aurora Wings. The airline had approached him after a series of losses and shareholder unrest. Marcus had run the numbers, reviewed their fleet performance, audited their books. He didn't just see risk, he saw transformation. He offered them a $95 million injection to modernize their aircraft, streamline operations, and improve their standing in the global market. The deal was almost done. All that was left, a face-to-face meeting in London with the Aurora board, which is why he had booked seat 2A. He'd planned to review his deck on the flight, refresh in the lounge, and walk into that meeting polished and prepared. Instead, he was sitting in a seat that didn't recline, knees crammed against the tray table, trying not to spill from a plastic cup of water. He shifted in his seat, pulling his phone from his inner pocket. One new email. Subject: confirmation. Transfer of $19,000. Complete. Marcus stared at the screen. It was done. The first tranche had cleared. $19 million had just been sent to Aurora Wings' treasury account, 3 minutes before they had pulled him out of first class. The irony didn't sting. It burned. Still, he smiled. Not bitter, not angry. Strategic. Because Marcus Daniels didn't fight in the aisle of a plane. He didn't shout or make scenes. No. He documented. He waited. He watched. And when the time came, he used power the way power was meant to be used. Quietly, precisely, irrevocably. He tapped open his finance app, scrolled to the transaction, and pressed a single button. Freeze remaining balance. A small green icon appeared. Funds on hold. $76 million left. He leaned back. The tray table still jammed into his ribs, the overhead light too bright. But Marcus didn't care anymore. He had just bought himself a front row seat to the moment Aurora Wings would realize exactly who they'd kicked to the back of the plane, and it was going to be one hell of a show. Marcus Daniels had just begun reviewing the latest revenue chart on his tablet when a shadow returned over his shoulder. It was her again. Sophia Reed. Same artificial smile, same clipboard tucked under one arm. She'd already checked his boarding pass 20 minutes ago. "Sir," she said sweetly. Too sweet. "I hate to bother you again, but can I see your boarding pass one more time?" Marcus looked up slowly. "You already verified it." "Yes," she nodded. "But we've had a system update, and some assignments are out of sync." He paused, stared at her for a beat, then reached for his phone again. "Here you go," he said, pulling up his digital confirmation, clearly displaying Seat 2A, Marcus A. Daniels. Sophia didn't look at the screen for more than a second. "Thank you," she said, voice clipped, and walked off again without eye contact. Marcus noticed something then. The white man across the aisle, Seat 2C, had not once been asked for his ticket. In fact, he was now sipping whiskey from a glass tumbler, reading The Economist. Nobody asked him twice. He looked up, caught Marcus's eye, and gave a little shrug. Equal parts apology and indifference. That was always how it went. It wasn't just that Marcus had to prove he belonged. It was that others never had to. 5 minutes passed. Then another flight attendant, male, younger, name tag reading Tim, approached. "Sir," he said nervously, "I'm so sorry to ask, but there seems to be a glitch in our manifest. Could I take a quick look at your boarding pass?" Marcus blinked. "Again?" I know, Tim said quickly. "This is just something from operations. It'll only take a second." Marcus kept his expression neutral. He'd worked in high-stakes rooms long enough to know when something was being orchestrated. And this wasn't a glitch. This was a pattern. He pulled up his boarding pass once more. Tim glanced at it, nodded awkwardly, and left. It wasn't the first time Marcus had been questioned. He remembered his first business class upgrade at 29, back when his suits didn't fit as well and his confidence hadn't yet hardened into armor. The gate agent that day had scanned his ticket, looked him up and down, and asked, "Is this really yours?" He remembered the country club event 5 years ago, where a hostess mistook him for the valet. He remembered them all. And the thing that never changed? The looks, the calculated doubt in people's eyes, the unspoken math running through their heads as they tried to reconcile his skin with his seat. And he remembered what his mother told him once, when he was 14 and got followed around in a department store. "They won't always call you the N-word, baby. Sometimes they'll just ask for your receipt 5 times. Marcus leaned back in his chair, watching the cabin fill in slowly. One by one, passengers entered, took their seats, slipped into the hush of first-class routine. And then he saw him. Lucas Grant, mid-30s, slick hair, expensive-looking duffel bag slung over one shoulder, wearing entitlement like cologne. Marcus recognized him instantly, son of Senator Grant, often seen at fundraisers and investment summits. Always loud, always first in line for the spotlight. Lucas stopped at the galley where Sophia stood. They spoke in hushed tones, but Marcus saw it. The nod toward his direction, the look on Lucas's face. Not confusion, expectation. He expected his seat to be ready. He expected no questions asked. He expected someone to be moved. Someone like Marcus. Marcus turned his attention back to his tablet, pretending not to notice. But his posture shifted. Shoulders straightened. He wasn't going to give them the show they were looking for. He had too much to lose, and too much experience to waste energy on performative resistance. Still, the anger simmered beneath the surface. Because this wasn't a system glitch. This was a decision. Someone upstairs had chosen to target him. Whether it was because he was the only black man in the first-class cabin, or because someone didn't like the idea of a CEO who didn't look like their typical Wall Street mold. It didn't matter. The effect was the same. Doubt, delay, dehumanization. Marcus took a deep breath, not out of stress, out of calculation. Because if there's one thing the investment world had taught him, it's that you never make a move until the market reveals itself. And right now, the market was showing him exactly who Aurora Wings really was. From the corner of his eye, Marcus noticed Sophia whisper something to another flight attendant, who then picked up the cabin phone. 2 minutes later, a pair of uniformed airport security officers appeared at the front of the cabin. They weren't moving fast, just hovering, hands near their hips, eyes locked on Marcus. And in that moment, he knew. They weren't just trying to move him, they were trying to provoke him. In the galley at the front of the first-class cabin, the lights were dimmed low, but the tension buzzed brighter than any overhead panel. Nathan Caldwell stood with his arms crossed, leaning against the curved wall like he owned it. Technically, he didn't. But as vice president of in-flight operations for Aurora Wings, Nathan was the kind of man who moved like rules bent for him. He didn't wear a name tag. He didn't need to. Everyone on the crew knew who he was, and more importantly, who backed him. Sophia Reed, the flight attendant who'd questioned Marcus twice already, stood across from him, clipboard clutched tight to her chest. Nathan kept his voice low, but his tone was sharper than the steel coffee pot between them. "Seat 2A, he said. "We've got a VIP boarding late. Lucas Grant." Sophia hesitated. "It's already occupied. Marcus Daniels, he—" "I know who he is." Nathan cut her off, his smile cold. "I looked him up when his name pinged in the system." She frowned. "He's a first-class passenger, fully ticketed." Nathan leaned closer, voice a notch quieter, a notch meaner. "Look, I don't care if the guy's the Pope of Wall Street. He's not the kind we want sitting next to Lucas. He's already pulling eyes from other passengers. Don't make this messy. Just find a reason." Sophia swallowed. "Sir, with all due respect—" "Find a reason," Nathan repeated, each word a pin pushed into her spine. "We're not asking him to leave the plane. Just move. And I want it handled before the door closes." He straightened his blazer, adjusted his cufflinks, and stepped back into the shadows of the galley as Sophia returned to the cabin, visibly unsettled. Marcus watched her coming before she even spoke. He could read her expression now. She wasn't just following policy. She was following orders. Sophia paused beside his seat. "Sir," she began carefully, "we've double-booked this seat in the system. We'd like to ask for your cooperation in relocating, just temporarily." Marcus set down his tablet slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. "Temporarily," she nodded, nervously. "We'll provide compensation, a voucher for future travel. There's also a seat open in economy." He glanced to the side. Seat 3C sat empty. He pointed at it. "That one's unoccupied." Sophia hesitated. "That seat is reserved." "For whom?" Before she could answer, a voice came from behind her. "Because some of us actually belong in first class." Marcus turned. Lucas Grant, the smug smile, the designer briefcase, the practiced entitlement. He stood over them like royalty, waiting for his throne to clear. Sophia stepped aside as if rehearsed. Lucas slid past her and tossed his briefcase onto the empty seat nearby. Marcus didn't move. "I belong exactly where my boarding pass says I do," he said calmly, voice even. At that moment, another uniformed figure appeared. this time with a small lapel pin that read Cabin Supervisor. "Is there a problem here?" she asked. Lucas jumped in before anyone else could speak. "Yes, I need my seat, and this gentleman is being difficult." The supervisor didn't even look at Marcus, just turned to Sophia. "Is this passenger refusing a reassignment?" Marcus's eyebrows lifted. "Refusing? I've shown my boarding pass 3 times. I'm seated in 2A, which I booked, paid for, and confirmed." The supervisor frowned. "This is now a matter of operational necessity, sir. I'm going to ask you to move. Cooperatively." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "Operational necessity," he repeated slowly. "Is that code for something? Because there's a seat available right over there." The supervisor didn't answer. Lucas smirked. Nathan Caldwell stepped into view then, hands in his pockets, smile like ice. He didn't introduce himself. "Sir," he said smoothly, "we can make this difficult or simple. Your choice." That wasn't a request, it was a threat. Marcus stayed still. "I'd like to speak with the captain," he said. Nathan's smile vanished. "The captain is preparing for departure. This is a cabin matter now. Security will assist if needed." At that moment, as if on cue, 2 airport security officers stepped forward from the bulkhead. Casual, but their hands hovered just close enough to their utility belts to send a message. Final call. Marcus looked around the cabin. A few passengers stared. Most averted their eyes. He could escalate this, raise his voice, demand his rights, turn this into a scene that would go viral in 5 seconds. Or he could document and wait. He turned to Nathan and the others, voice steady as stone. "I will move under protest, and I'll need the names and employee IDs of everyone involved." Nathan blinked, thrown off for just a second. "Noted," Marcus added, gathering his briefcase. Lucas stepped forward to claim the seat with the hunger of a man used to winning. "Just be grateful we're still letting you fly," he muttered loud enough for Marcus to hear. Marcus paused, looked him square in the face, didn't say a word, just smiled. Marcus lifted his briefcase, straightened his blazer, and turned toward the back of the plane. The aisle felt longer than it should have. As he walked past the polished wood panels of the first-class cabin, no one made eye contact. Not the man in 2C. Not the woman sipping champagne. Not even the elderly couple who had watched everything unfold in silence. Eyes dropped, heads turned away. Like his mere presence made people uncomfortable. Not because of what he'd done, but because they didn't want to witness it. Humiliation is quieter than rage. It's 1,000 tiny cuts, each one too small to protest, but together, they bleed something out of you. Row 34, seat E middle. Between a heavy-set man in khakis and a young woman who immediately pressed herself against the window when he arrived. "Excuse me," Marcus said gently. The man barely shifted, making Marcus awkwardly twist and squeeze into place. He sat down, knees jammed into the seat in front of him, elbows pinned against his sides. His body too tall, too broad for this space. The man beside him chuckled without malice. "They really packed us in, huh?" Marcus offered a tight smile. "Something like that." The air vent above him was broken. Nothing but stale, recycled air. He loosened his tie just a little, not because he wanted to, but because dignity needs room to breathe. Across the aisle, a toddler kicked the back of a seat. A baby cried somewhere up front. The tray table was sticky. The armrest wobbled. He'd spent 40 years building a career where he didn't have to endure this anymore. But tonight, none of it mattered. Not his degrees, not his portfolio, not his seat assignment. Tonight, he'd been reminded, in front of strangers, in silence, with just enough civility to avoid lawsuits, that in certain eyes, he was still just someone to be removed. And what was worse, it was all done with a smile. 20 minutes into the flight, he pressed the call button. Nothing. He waited, pressed it again. A different flight attendant passed by, offering drinks from a cart. "Could I have some water?" Marcus asked. The attendant barely glanced at him, returned a moment later with a half-filled plastic cup. water already sloshing inside. She didn't say a word, just shoved it onto his tray and kept walking. The man next to Marcus raised an eyebrow. "That's all they gave you?" Marcus nodded. "Huh," the man said, looking at his own full can of Coke, still unopened. "Weird." Marcus didn't respond. He sipped the water. It tasted like metal and something else. Disrespect. When he finally reached for his tablet to resume reviewing his pitch deck, he realized the Wi-Fi was too weak to download the files. He tapped, refreshed, waited. Nothing. He sighed and reached into his bag for the backup flash drive, only to remember that bag was in his checked luggage. The one that had been tagged for direct delivery to the London hotel. The one he'd carefully packed with printouts, backups, spare clothes, backup tie. The one that was now, he suspected, no longer headed to London at all. Just then, a notification pinged on his phone. "Luggage alert. Your checked item has been rerouted to Minneapolis. No explanation, no option to fix it." Marcus stared at the screen. It wasn't random. He knew that. Someone had flagged his bag, reassigned it, just like his seat. This wasn't policy. This was personal. He leaned back, forcing himself to breathe slowly. He thought of his mother again. Her voice, always calm, always firm. When they go low, you don't shout, you document. He reached for his phone, opened his voice memo app, and began recording. Time, flight number, names, incidents, everything. He would not raise his voice. He would raise evidence, because he'd learned long ago, justice doesn't begin in court. It begins with recording what they try to bury. Across the aisle, he noticed a young woman holding her phone low, subtly filming him. Their eyes met. She didn't say a word, just gave a slight nod, solidarity. And for the first time in the past hour, Marcus felt something shift. Not hope, but clarity. He wasn't alone. He wasn't invisible. The beverage cart came back around. The woman across from Marcus received a full can of ginger ale. Marcus tried again. "May I have the rest of the water, please?" The attendant turned, annoyed. "That's all we have available right now, sir." The man beside Marcus pointed. "You just gave that guy a full can." The attendant shrugged. "I can come back if we have extra," she muttered, then pushed the cart forward. Marcus didn't move, didn't blink, just made a note. Another one, another cut, another line in the ledger. By the time the plane reached cruising altitude, Marcus Daniels had logged 7 separate acts of discriminatory treatment. 3 subtle, 4 blatant. He had receipts, he had video, and he had clarity. They thought they were taking a seat from a man, but what they'd really done was hand the most powerful person on that flight a reason, and that, they'd learn, was a mistake. The cabin lights had dimmed. Marcus sat motionless in 34E, surrounded by the soft hum of jet engines and the quiet snores of passengers who had no idea what had just happened or who he was. He didn't need them to know. Let them sleep. Let them sip their ginger ale and watch their bad rom-coms and pat themselves on the back for being decent travelers who stayed out of it. He didn't need justice from strangers. He needed leverage. The phone in his hand vibrated gently. One notification, plain and silent. $19,000 transfer complete. Aurora Wings Holdings. He stared at it for a full 5 seconds. 19 million. Cleared. Gone from Pinnacle's account. Now sitting, comfortably, confidently, in the account of the very airline that had just relegated him to row 34 without blinking. Marcus let out a breath. There it was. The clean, corporate hypocrisy of it all. He'd wired the money 2 hours before the flight, a gesture of goodwill, a sign of confidence. An investor saying, "I believe in your company, I believe in this deal." And what had he received in return? Humiliation. Public, calculated, efficient. He didn't even get a glass of water. He opened the finance dashboard on his phone. Thumbprint login. Encrypted cloud sync. A familiar green and white interface popped up. Pinnacle Capital, Authorized transactions. He tapped into the Aurora folder. The scheduled investment, 19mm. Initial payment cleared $76, frozen until board ratification 95mm total. Marcus stared at the remaining line item, $76 million, still sitting and holding, still under his control. He leaned back in the stiff economy seat, knees still jammed against the tray, and tapped one button. Freeze remaining balance. The app asked for confirmation. He didn't hesitate. Confirm. A loading wheel spun for 2 seconds. Then, funds successfully frozen. He smiled. Small, quiet, but real. They'd taken his seat. They'd played their game. Now he was playing his. He minimized the app and opened his photo gallery. 5 videos, 3 still images. Each one showed a different angle of the confrontation. Some from behind, some from the side. One from across the cabin, perfectly capturing the moment Sophia had said, "Sir, you need to move or we'll call security." He hit Save to Secure folder, then opened voice memos. He replayed the last few minutes. "Security will assist if needed. Just be grateful we're still letting you fly. I'll move under protest." His own voice, calm, steady. It was all there. The evidence. Not rage, not chaos. Just the undeniable record of discrimination disguised as protocol. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. The glow of the tablet screen still faint beneath the seat in front of him. He thought of Aurora's CEO, Walter Kingston, the man who had courted him for months. Dinners, golf invitations, handwritten thank you cards. Walter had said all the right things about inclusion and modernizing the brand. But the moment Marcus stepped on that plane, Aurora Wings had shown him exactly what kind of company they still were. What mattered more than money was appearance, comfort, control, and no amount of shareholder equity would change a corporate culture that had never expected a black man to be the one holding the pen at the deal table. Not unless he forced their hand. Another notification buzzed on screen. A message from Aisha, Pinnacle's COO. London car confirmed. Aurora board still expects you at 10 a.m. Want to proceed? Marcus typed back, "Proceed as planned. We'll explain in person." She replied instantly. "Understood. You okay?" He stared at the message for a long moment before typing, "Focused." And he was, more than ever. An hour later, the beverage cart returned. A new attendant this time, older, Latino, quiet. He looked down at Marcus and did a slight double take. "You're Marcus Daniels?" Marcus didn't blink. "I am." The man's face softened. "I read your piece in Harvard Business Quarterly last year about ethical capital. That stayed with me." Marcus offered a faint nod. "Appreciate that." The attendant reached into the cart, pulled out a glass, not plastic, poured him a full club soda and lime, first-class standard, set it down gently on Marcus's tray, then walked away. It wasn't much, but it was something. A small reminder. The world saw him. Some part of it anyway. And soon, all of it would. The cabin lights flickered once, then dimmed into soft blue. Most passengers had fallen asleep. Marcus Daniels hadn't closed his eyes. He wasn't tired. He was processing. The freeze on the remaining $76 million had been set. His audio memos were backed up to 3 secure servers. The photos, the footage, the receipts, they were all locked and logged. But what he didn't expect, sitting there in 34E, was how fast the outside world would catch on. His phone buzzed. "At Flight Truth. Now just tagged you in a video. 87K views." He clicked. The thumbnail alone made his stomach twist. A wide shot from seat 3B, capturing Marcus standing in first class with Sophia pointing toward the back. The caption read, "Black man removed from first class while white passenger gets VIP seat. What year is this?" The video wasn't dramatic. No yelling, no chaos. Just silence. The kind that screamed louder than shouting ever could. He scrolled through the comments. He paid for 2A. They kicked him out for that guy? This looks like some 1963 energy, not 2023. This is why we document everything. Another ping. At Corporate Karma reposted the video, 342K views. Then another. Black CEO removed from seat he paid for. Aurora Wings, you have some explaining to do. Marcus didn't smile. He didn't nod. He just kept scrolling. An email popped up from Janine, his head of PR. Subject: You're trending, Marcus. We've got 6 different angles of the incident circulating. Passengers are posting their clips, all time-stamped, all consistent. Hatch C2A is trending. So is Hash Marcus Daniels. Dozens of people are defending you. Dozens more are tagging Aurora Wings demanding answers. This may hit national news by morning. He set the phone down for a moment and stared ahead. It wasn't like him to go viral. He built his reputation avoiding the spotlight, built Pinnacle through discretion, data, and deals, not noise. But this wasn't noise anymore. It was clarity. The whole world was starting to see what he'd been seeing for decades, what black professionals face in silence. What happens when you're not just told you don't belong, but shown it, publicly, deliberately. A notification buzzed again. CNN breaking, Aurora Wings, under fire. After passenger removal incident, we are reviewing the matter. He clicked. There it was, a blurry photo of him standing in the aisle. Headline beneath it, Investor or Intruder, Aurora faces backlash. After CEO Marcus Daniels removed from first class. The subheading chilled him. Daniels, whose firm Pinnacle Capital manages over $3 billion in assets, was removed without cause, replaced by Lucas Grant, son of a sitting U.S. senator. It was out now, the whole truth, or at least the beginning of it. By the time the plane began its descent into London, Marcus had been tagged in 114 tweets, mentioned in 39 LinkedIn posts, and received over 60 unread text messages, most from colleagues, old friends, former mentees. Some messages were simple. We saw. Standing with you. Whatever you need. Others were raw. Same thing happened to me in Houston last year. They said my seat was double booked. I've never spoken up until now, but seeing you take it like that, I feel seen. You're doing this for all of us. Marcus closed the phone. Not to disconnect, but to focus. This wasn't just a moment anymore. It was a movement, and he was at the center of it, whether he'd wanted to be or not. The wheels touched down with a low rumble. Marcus didn't rush off the plane. He let the others move past him. Business travelers in tailored suits, influencers in yoga pants, the man from 2C who wouldn't meet his eyes. He waited until the aisle cleared, until the silence stretched just long enough for reflection. And then he stood, shoulders back, briefcase in hand. He didn't say a word to the flight crew. He didn't need to, because now they knew who he was. Outside the terminal, a black car waited, driver holding a small sign. Mr. Daniels. Marcus nodded and stepped in. The city of London shimmered past the window as they drove toward the headquarters of Aurora Wings. Inside, his phone buzzed again. Aurora PR. We are deeply concerned. We value all our customers. We are investigating. He almost laughed. Investigating. As if the world hadn't already done it for them. Inside his inbox was a final message from his assistant, waiting like a loaded gun. Board meeting confirmed at 10 a.m. All members present, CEO Walter Kingston included. Marcus replied, I'll be there, and I'll bring the truth with me. The boardroom on the 38th floor of Aurora Wings Global HQ was designed to impress. Panoramic skyline views, walls of frosted glass, a table so long it looked like it could launch satellites. But this morning, no one was impressed. Not with themselves, not with each other, and certainly not with the man who had just walked into the room, Marcus Daniels. He was calm, impeccably dressed in a dark navy suit, crisp white shirt. and a tie the color of midnight. His expression unreadable, but his presence undeniable. CEO Walter Kingston rose from his seat first. "Mr. Daniels," he began, voice too bright for the tension in the room. "So glad you made it in this morning." Marcus gave a slow nod. "No thanks to your flight crew," he said evenly, his voice landing like a pin dropped in church. There was a flicker of confusion across several faces, a rustle of movement. Someone cleared their throat. Kingston's smile thinned. "Yes, we've heard there was a situation on the flight. Rest assured, we're looking into it." "Are you?" Marcus said. He stepped forward and placed his briefcase on the conference table, unlatched it with a quiet click, pulled out a small folder. He didn't speak yet. Let the silence thicken. Let the discomfort settle. VP of Strategy, Lauren Mendez, tried to redirect. "Mr. Daniels, before we dive into flight issues, let's talk numbers. Your team's proposal is remarkable. We're aligned with the vision for the $95 million infusion. The $19 million transfer was received." Marcus raised a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. I froze the rest. Dead stop. Kingston blinked. I'm sorry." "The remaining $76 million, Marcus said, voice calm but sharp. "Frozen. As of last night." "On what grounds?" CFO Charles Day blurted. "That's already been structured into our Q3 liquidity assumptions." "Then maybe," Marcus said, "you shouldn't have allowed your VP of in-flight ops to personally order my removal from the seat I paid for." Another silence. This one heavier. More charged. Kingston opened his mouth, then closed it again. Marcus placed a printed photo on the table. Him, standing in first class, being pointed toward the back. Dozens of cameras had captured it. He let the board look at it, let them see the posture, the disrespect, the optics. Then, slowly, he said, "The man your crew humiliated in front of a full cabin last night, the one you reassigned without cause, that man was me." A beat. No one moved. Then Kingston, flustered, tried to recover. "Mr. Daniels, surely this was some sort of administrative error." "No," Marcus cut in, voice low and lethal. "It wasn't." He slid another photo forward, a still from a video. Lucas Grant stepping smugly into the seat Marcus had vacated. The seat wasn't double booked. It was targeted for someone whiter, louder, more connected, and apparently more deserving in the eyes of your staff. No one dared interrupt now. He continued, "I've spent the past 40 years building Pinnacle from scratch. My company employs over 300 people, many of them people of color who were told, like I was, that they didn't belong." His gaze swept the room. "And now I've come to offer a 9-figure investment, a rescue package, frankly. You needed it. Still do." He let that hang. "But if you think I'm going to write a check to a company that treats people like they did me last night, then you haven't been paying attention to who you're in the room with." Kingston looked cornered now, pale. "This is a misunderstanding, Marcus." "No," Marcus said again, firmer. "This is policy that you've allowed to go unchecked, culture you've failed to change, and a leadership team that makes decisions based on skin color and social proximity." He leaned forward slightly. "But here's the thing. You didn't just insult a man on your plane. You insulted your lead investor in front of millions of people." Lauren whispered. "Millions?" Marcus opened his phone, turned the screen, showed the trending tag. Black CEO removed 8.3 M views and counting. Kingston's hands trembled slightly. "What do you want?" Marcus looked him in the eye. "First, accountability. Second, structural reform. And third, Nathan Caldwell's resignation." A gasp from the end of the table. Someone cursed under their breath. "I'll send the full list of terms by end of day," Marcus added. "Until then, that $76 million stays exactly where it is." He packed up the folder, snapped the briefcase shut, straightened his cuffs, and turned to leave. At the door, he paused. turned back. "One last thing," he said. "You didn't just lose a seat last night. You lost the illusion that this company could continue operating the way it always has. Now, you're in my airspace." And with that, he walked out. The door had barely closed behind Marcus when the boardroom erupted. "Jesus Christ," someone muttered. "He was the one in 2A?" another blurted out. CFO Charles Day ran a hand through his thinning hair. "This isn't just PR. This is catastrophic." At the head of the table, Walter Kingston remained frozen, knuckles white against the leather armrest. The name Marcus Daniels suddenly felt less like a meeting on the calendar and more like a grenade with the pin pulled out. And it had just gone off. In the corner, Nathan Caldwell stood stiff, arms crossed too tightly, face flushed beneath his tan. Lauren Mendez turned toward him, voice sharp. "You knew." Nathan didn't blink. "Knew what?" "Don't play dumb," she snapped. "You knew who he was, your head of operations. You get flagged for every VIP over $10 million. Nathan shrugged. His name was buried in the manifest. We didn't know he was that Marcus Daniels. "Bullshit," Charles hissed. "You reassigned 2A for Lucas Grant. You had Sophia push a verified first-class ticketed passenger to coach. That's not system error. That's targeted removal." Nathan's jaw clenched. "It was a judgment call." "Well, congrats," Lauren shot back. "You just made the most expensive judgment call in aviation history." Kingston finally spoke, voice thin and strained. "He's holding the $76 million. Worse," Charles added. "He's weaponizing it, publicly. That hashtag has passed 9 million views. Our investor line is flooded. CNN called 5 times this morning." Lauren paced now, heels clicking on the hardwood. "Board is already whispering. Legal is prepping statements. Every internal memo's being screenshot and leaked. You think shareholders won't demand a vote if this snowballs?" Nathan's face hardened. "Let me fix it." "Fix it?" Lauren turned, stunned. "You shoved the man funding our survival into a coach seat and handed his spot to a senator's son who shows up late and smells like privilege. You can't fix that with a press release." Nathan stepped forward, voice lowering. "I'll talk to Marcus. I'll apologize. We'll spin it as miscommunication. Offer him a board seat. Hell, name a terminal after him if we have to." Charles scoffed. "You think Marcus Daniels wants a terminal? He wants accountability, and we're about 30 years overdue." Meanwhile, on the 24th floor, in a quiet glass-walled office, Marcus sat with his assistant Aisha Robinson and PR director Janine Fletcher. Aisha held out a tablet. "NBC wants an exclusive." Janine added, "So does The Guardian. And Forbes just emailed. They're calling it the 2A moment." Marcus didn't look surprised. "Tell them, no interviews, yet." Aisha nodded. "Understood, but it's spreading, fast." Marcus tapped the edge of his glass. "How's the board reacting?" Janine smirked. "Internal chatter says Kingston's rattled. Legal's trying to quarantine the incident as unfortunate mishandling. And Nathan, he's calling in favors left and right." "Let him," Marcus said, cool and quiet. "Let them all scramble." Back upstairs, the boardroom war continued. Nathan turned to Kingston now. "You need to back me up. This is spiraling, and Daniels is manipulating the narrative." Kingston didn't respond immediately. Then, "Were you aware who was in 2A when you ordered the reassignment?" Nathan hesitated. Too long. "Not definitively." "Did you override manifest protocol?" "Lucas is a political asset. He's friends with 2 federal transport chairs. Answer the question, Nathan." Another pause. "Yes." Silence. Then Kingston sighed. "Effective immediately, you're placed under internal review. Your access is suspended until further notice." Nathan's jaw dropped. "What?" "You endangered our largest investor," Kingston said. "And now our stock is sliding faster than our planes can take off." Back in Marcus's office, Aisha handed him a fresh document. "This just came in from Aurora's counsel. They're proposing a closed-door apology and a revised investment structure." Marcus read it, smiled, just barely. "Not yet." He tapped the table lightly. "This isn't about my seat anymore." Aisha tilted her head. "Then what is it about now?" Marcus looked up. "Who gets to decide who belongs?" He stood, walked to the window, and watched the city stretch below him. A new email arrived. Subject line: Statement from Aurora. "We value every passenger." He didn't open it. He'd heard that line before, so had millions of others, and this time, the world wasn't buying it. The studio lights weren't blinding, but they were hot. Marcus Daniels adjusted his collar once, then placed both hands on his lap as the floor manager gave the countdown. 3, 2, 1. The red light blinked on. Across from him sat Catherine Reyes, anchor of the primetime show Face the Facts, known for asking questions that made CEOs sweat and politicians stammer. She smiled politely. "Mr. Daniels, thank you for joining us." Marcus met her gaze. "Thank you for having me." Her voice softened, but only slightly. "You've become something of a reluctant symbol in the past 48 hours. Over 10 million people have seen the video of you being removed from your first-class seat. For our viewers who haven't, can you walk us through what happened?" Marcus nodded slowly. "I boarded a plane with a confirmed ticket, sat in the seat I paid for, was asked, then told, to move. Not because of a policy, but because someone more familiar to them wanted it." Catherine raised an eyebrow. "You're referring to Lucas Grant?" "I'm referring to the culture that made that decision feel acceptable." The screen behind them flashed a still image from the video, Marcus standing calmly, while a flight attendant pointed him toward economy. Catherine let the image sit for a beat before continuing. "Critics say this was a customer service error, unfortunate but not racial. What would you say to them?" Marcus didn't flinch. "I've flown over 1,000 times in my life. 15 years in first class. Never once, until that day, was I asked to prove my seat 3 times. Never once was I told to move for someone who showed up late, handed no ticket, and was escorted in like royalty." Catherine nodded, letting him continue. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a reflection, a mirror held up to a system that still struggles with who it believes belongs in positions of access, comfort, and power. They cut to a wide shot, Marcus calm, composed, not angry, not performative, just present. And that, more than anything, unsettled the old narrative. He didn't need to yell. The truth did the heavy lifting. Catherine leaned forward. "Your company had already transferred $19 million to Aurora Wings. You then froze the remaining $76 million. What led to that decision?" Marcus folded his hands. "Trust is the currency of business. When a company shows it cannot treat its own customers with basic dignity, how can I trust it with my capital?" "And now?" "Now," Marcus said, voice even, "I want to make sure what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else. Not in the air, not in boardrooms, not in hiring meetings, not in schools." He looked into the camera, not at Catherine, at America. "This isn't about a seat. It's about the message that seat sends when it's denied, and who gets to keep their dignity in public spaces without having to earn it twice." Backstage, Aurora's PR team sat huddled around laptops, eyes wide, mouths tight. Kingston hadn't returned any calls that day. Nathan's email had been deactivated by noon. And social media? Hatch corporate color lines was now trending in 6 countries. Catherine closed her notebook. "One final question, Mr. Daniels. You didn't ask for this spotlight, but now that you have it, what do you intend to do with it?" Marcus paused, then answered carefully. "I built Pinnacle to be more than a firm. I wanted it to be a vehicle for ethical investment. Capital that isn't just smart, but just." He continued, "I intend to use every dollar, every connection, every platform to make sure people like me aren't told to move to the back ever again. Not metaphorically, not physically, not financially." The screen faded to black. The segment was over, but the conversation just beginning. An hour later, the interview had been clipped and shared across every major platform. Celebrities reposted it. Civil rights organizations issued statements of support. Former Aurora passengers began sharing their own stories, some eerily similar to Marcus's. A chorus was forming. One voice had become many. Back in his hotel suite, Marcus took off his tie, laid it gently across the back of the chair, and exhaled deeply. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He just stood still, letting the weight of it all settle. In the silence, his phone buzzed one more time. A message from Aisha. "They're scared now, but they still don't get it." Marcus replied, "They will," then turned to the window, where the city glowed beneath a soft, defiant sky. 2 days after Marcus Daniels' interview aired, Aurora Wings was still in freefall. Their stock had dropped 12%. 3 of their top 5 corporate travel contracts were under review. And every morning news segment seemed to replay the same image. Marcus standing in row 2A, briefcase in hand, while being escorted away. Calm, unmoved. A symbol not just of corporate racism, but of a man who'd had enough. And somewhere in a private office on the 30th floor, Nathan Caldwell was seething. He paced the length of his windowed corner suite, fists clenched, phone to his ear. "No," he barked. "I don't care what the board says or legal. We don't just take this lying down. This guy's trying to ruin me." He paused, jaw tight. "Leak it." The "it" in question was a package Nathan had been curating for weeks, just in case. It was a classic move, one he'd seen work too many times in old-school power circles. Discredit the threat, shift the narrative, make the righteous look unhinged. Within hours, a popular but notoriously biased financial blog published the first wave. Who is Marcus Daniels really? Shocking allegations from former colleagues suggest he's not who he claims. The article wasn't based on facts. It was based on anonymized accusations, pulled from nothing, and sources close to the matter. Allegations that Marcus had intimidated junior staff, that he'd doctored earnings reports, that he'd used his race as a shield to avoid scrutiny. There was no proof, but proof wasn't the point. Doubt was. It spread fast, faster than Marcus liked. Within a day, conservative pundits latched onto it. "He's playing the victim card to cover up shady business practices," one Fox panelist said. Another added, "We've seen this before, people leveraging identity politics to silence accountability." Some even suggested that Pinnacle's capital wasn't real, that Marcus was using the Aurora scandal as a distraction from looming bankruptcy. Hashtags flipped. Hashtag Black CEO Removed was now competing with Daniels Deception and Truth Over Tears. On social media, the algorithm had no morality, only momentum. Inside Pinnacle's New York office, the tension was palpable. Aisha Robinson, Marcus's COO, dropped the latest printouts on the conference room table. "We've lost 4 mid-tier investor meetings. One bank has pulled out of our pending credit line review." Marcus glanced at the headlines. He didn't flinch. "We expected this," he said. James Chen, the general counsel, spoke next. "We've confirmed that all 3 sources quoted in the original smear were either terminated for cause or have ties to Caldwell's network. We're drafting defamation suits." "Hold off," Marcus replied. "Hold off?" Aisha echoed. "Marcus, they're trying to tear your name apart. We've spent 20 years—" I said wait. He looked them both in the eye. "This isn't new. It's just louder now." Later that night, alone in his apartment, Marcus sat in the dark, scrolling through the latest articles. They had gone after everything. His financial history, his Harvard transcripts. A decades-old traffic citation, even a pixelated photo of him attending a college party, as if that meant something. He didn't cry. He didn't break anything. But he did stare, long and hard, at the face looking back at him from the screen. His own. Framed by doubt, by slander, by a machine that had been built long before him and would likely outlive him. A machine designed to remind men like him, you may build empires, but the moment you raise your voice, We'll try to erase your name." The next morning, Aisha burst into his office. "You need to see this," she said, tablet in hand. A new video, not edited, not spun, raw. It had been posted by a college student who had sat across the aisle from Marcus during that infamous flight. The video showed Marcus calmly explaining that he had a confirmed seat. It showed Sophia Reed, the flight attendant, avoiding eye contact. It showed Lucas Grant smirking, being escorted in like a prince. The video was quiet, but undeniable. In contrast to the noise of opinion, it was evidence, real, unshakable. It hit 1 million views in 3 hours, then 5, then 10. By noon, another blow landed, this time from inside Aurora. An anonymous whistleblower, verified as a mid-level manager, leaked internal emails. Nathan Caldwell personally requesting additional scrutiny for certain passengers who generate unwanted attention. One email even referenced Marcus by name, a week before the flight. That night, CNN ran a segment titled, "Smear Campaign Backfires. Leaked emails suggest coordinated retaliation against Daniels." Nathan's narrative was crumbling, fast. Back inside Pinnacle, Marcus sat with his legal team and PR director. "Do we move now?" Aisha asked. "We've got momentum." Marcus nodded slowly. "Yes, but not to clear my name. That'll take care of itself." "Then what?" "To show people what happens behind closed doors, when the people with power feel threatened by truth." He launched a new initiative the next morning, the Daniels Transparency Project. It was a digital repository, public, free to access, containing all documentation related to his case. Full footage, internal emails, his frozen investment records, annotated timelines, employee testimonies. He wasn't just telling people what happened, he was showing them in full daylight. The public reacted fast. Corporate watchdogs praised the move. Young professionals called it a masterclass in how to fight back without selling your soul. Civil rights groups shared it as a blueprint. And most importantly, it shifted the narrative again, not from anger to pity, but from slander to strength, from victim to visionary. By evening, Aurora Wings's boardroom looked like a war zone. Kingston stared at the latest headlines. His hands trembled. Nathan sat in a corner, silent, sweating. Lauren Mendez stood at the window, phone in hand. "Do it," she said. "He's not the problem. You are." Nathan's badge was deactivated by midnight, and by morning, so was his access to everything. Marcus watched the sun rise from his hotel balcony. His phone buzzed once, a text from Aisha. "He's gone." He didn't smile, didn't toast. He just nodded, murmured to the wind, "One down, the system's next." The press conference was already trending before it began. Marcus Daniels, live, no scripts, no lawyers. Just him and a folder. Across every major financial network, headlines flashed in bold. Marcus Daniels to address Aurora scandal. Will he pull out of 95M investment? At 10:58 a.m., Marcus stood backstage at the conference center, calm but sharp-eyed. Aisha handed him a note. "Walter Kingston is here, second row, stage left. He didn't want to be seen, but he couldn't stay away." Marcus didn't even glance toward the room. He already knew. Kingston wouldn't miss this for the world. Not because he cared about what Marcus might say, but because he feared what Marcus might reveal. At 11 o'clock sharp, Marcus stepped onto the podium. No fanfare, no lights, just quiet, weighted expectation. He placed a single folder on the lectern, opened it, and began. "Last month, I agreed to invest $95 million into Aurora Wings, a company whose fleet was aging, whose debt was deepening, and whose leadership said they were ready for real change." He paused. Let the room settle. What I didn't know at the time was that the change they meant was window dressing. Diversity on brochures, inclusion in mission statements, but not in practice. Screens behind him lit up with real-time graphs. Aurora's demographic hiring data, 84% of leadership white. Customer complaint heat maps, emails from whistleblowers. Video stills from the infamous Flight 227. Then he turned a page. Many of you saw what happened to me on that flight. But this story is bigger than me. That was just the moment they got caught doing what they've done for years, just not to someone who could fight back. Gasps rippled through the room as Marcus clicked to the next slide. A document appeared. Passenger appearance flagging protocol, internal use only. Timestamp 14 months before the incident. Author Walter Kingston. In clean corporate jargon, the policy described how flight crews should de-escalate discomfort from VIP passengers by reassessing cabin placements if a boarding passenger generates visible tension. It included keywords: non-traditional business attire, tattoo visibility, perceived demeanor, language patterns, and finally, passenger mismatch with premium cabin expectations. No direct mention of race, but everyone in the room understood what it meant. So did America. From the second row, Walter Kingston's face drained of color. Aisha was watching him like a hawk. So were 4 reporters from CNBC, 3 civil rights attorneys, and 1 woman live streaming from her phone with a caption that simply read, "This is how systems fall." Marcus continued. This document was signed off by Mr. Kingston and distributed to regional supervisors. It's been in effect since 2021. It was used to justify at least 23 removals from premium cabins, 19 of whom were black or brown passengers. Another slide clicked in. This one, a spreadsheet. Case IDs, dates, routes, names, reasons for reassignment. And in the final column, resolution, discretionary adjustment, no public report. The room was silent. You could hear reporters scribbling. You could hear Kingston's career cracking like glass beneath a slow, deliberate heel. Marcus closed the folder, then looked up. They call this customer service. I call it what it is. Institutionalized bias, masked as protocol. Executed quietly, routinely, until one day, they pushed the wrong man into the wrong row. He stepped back from the mic. And now, they're going to answer for it. By 1:00 p.m., the footage had gone global. 23 major publications ran versions of the same headline. CEO tied to passenger discrimination policy exposed by investor live on air. By 3:02 p.m., Aurora's board had called an emergency session. By 4:00 p.m., Walter Kingston had voluntarily stepped aside pending review. And by sundown, Marcus Daniels was no longer just the man removed from 2A. He was the man who removed a CEO. That night, Aisha, Janine, and James joined Marcus in his suite. The lights were off, phones face down, champagne unopened. They sat in silence for a while, the city of London blinking outside the window. Then James finally asked what they were all thinking. "Do we walk away?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he picked up a piece of paper from the table, Aurora's new proposal. It offered full public apology, permanent diversity oversight board with 2 Pinnacle appointees, compensation fund for all 23 displaced passengers, immediate CEO transition, new contract valuing Pinnacle's equity stake at $150 million, up from $95 million, he set it down. "Not yet," Marcus said. "We're not finished." The next morning, he called Heather Stevens, the flight attendant who had slipped him the first internal memo weeks earlier. "Ready?" he asked. Her voice trembled, but it was steady. "Yes." That night, 60 Minutes aired a special. Skylines and color lines, inside the culture of discrimination at 30,000 feet. Marcus sat beside Heather in the final segment. She described the training, the whispered orders, the day she was told to clean up the optics in row 2. "I knew it wasn't right," she said, "but I also knew if I didn't follow it, I'd be the one grounded." Marcus turned to her on camera. "You're not grounded anymore." The episode exploded. Viewership shattered records. Donations poured into an employee legal defense fund for airline whistleblowers. And finally, Aurora's remaining holdouts folded. 3 days later, Marcus returned to the very headquarters where he'd once been ignored in the lobby. This time, the receptionist stood up before he reached the desk. "Mr. Daniels," she said warmly, "the boardroom is ready for you." And for the first time in company history, so was the truth. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Marcus Daniels stepped into the 38th floor boardroom of Aurora Wings for the final time. Not as a guest, but as a condition. The faces around the table were different now, more diverse, more alert, more aware. Sandra Reeves, interim CEO, greeted him with a quiet nod. "Thank you for returning." Marcus sat, his presence alone enough to make the room sit straighter. He pulled out the new contract, not the one from weeks ago. This one bore his signature, but only after every clause of transformation had been met. Aurora's board expanded to include 4 new seats, 2 held by Pinnacle, 2 reserved for civil rights and ethics representatives. A $20 million compensation fund established for past passengers wrongfully removed. Mandatory independent audits on hiring, promotion, and customer treatment. And above all, the creation of a permanent, enforceable passenger bill of dignity. Sandra looked at him. "This isn't just a deal anymore, is it?" "No," Marcus said. "It's a mirror." She blinked. "A mirror?" He nodded. To every company that ever thought a seat, a smile, or a press release could cover for bias, this makes it clear those days are over. As the board signed the agreement, Marcus rose quietly and walked to the window. The city below pulsed with motion. Planes rose, lights flickered, buildings climbed. But somewhere out there, someone was watching. Some kid who looked like him at 16. Some woman who'd been told her resume didn't fit the culture. Some family rerouted to the back of the plane while their name was pronounced wrong again. He didn't need to know their names. He just needed to leave the door wider than he found it. Back downstairs, a young receptionist approached him, eyes bright. "Sir, I just wanted to say thank you for everything." Marcus smiled, warm but tired. "Don't thank me yet," he said. "Help me keep the pressure on." Then he walked out. No camera crews, no headlines, just one man reclaiming airspace for everyone.